Hello dear students, welcome back to Akshat International School online classes. In the previous lecture, we had seen what biomolecules are. That is, those complex organic lifeless substances which form the basis of life, which are required for the growth, maintenance and other functionings of the human body. We had studied carbohydrates and glucose in detail. In this part, we will be continuing with the same chapter, that is biomolecules, and the next topics would be proteins and nucleic acids. So, today's first topic is proteins. The word protein is derived from a Greek word proteos, which means the basis of life or primary or of primary importance, and hence proteins are those biomolecules which are very essential or they form the very integral part of our body. These proteins are basically the fundamental building blocks of the body, as they are essential for the growth and the strength which is there in the body. Example, we can see milk, cheese, meat. All these are those sources which provide strength, the build muscular mass of the body, and hence we can say that the proteins are essential in the building, growth, maintenance and the strength providing of the body. Proteins are basically those biomolecules which are considered as the polymers of amino acid. That means proteins are the complex biomolecules which are the polymeric form of amino acid. Hence, when we talk about proteins, when we hydrolyze these proteins, we get peptides. And when these peptides are further hydrolyzed, we get amino acids. That is, n number of amino acids combine to form protein. That is, proteins are the polymers of amino acids. This in turn brings us to amino acid. So now let us see what these amino acids are. In this particular step, we have already seen that amino acids are basically those monomers which polymerize to form proteins. Or we can say that amino acids are the basic building blocks of proteins. These amino acids contain both amide as well as carboxylic groups. That is, when we talk about the structure of protein amino acids, we have COOH, that is the carboxylic acid group. Then we have NH2, that is the amide group, and then goes a side chain. This R is the side chain or the place where the chains will elongate either this side. This is the carboxylic group, this is the carboxylic group, and this is basically the amide group. That means amino acids contain both amide as well as carboxylic acidic groups. This nitrogen of the amide is attached to the carbons other than the carbon of this carboxylic group. And according to that, the amino acids are termed as either alpha or beta or gamma or delta, depending upon the position of this amide group with respect to the carboxylic acid group. As we had seen, the D and L designations In the glucose, in the same way, we have D and L designations for the amino acids as well. We had seen that when the OH group is present on the left hand side in the glyceraldehyde molecule, that particular is known as the L-glyceraldehyde or the L-glucose. In the same way, if we talk about the amides or if we talk about the amino acids, when this amide group would be present towards the left hand side in the molecule, we would say that this particular amino acid is capital L, not small l, which represents the levorotatory. This is just a designation which shows that the position of the amide group with respect to the carboxylic groups. Okay, so let's see the structure. Suppose this is see, here it is present on the left hand side, and this basically signifies that this is the L form. Okay, not the small l which designates the levorotatory substances. Here we can see one more very important thing, that is this carbon of the amino acid is chiral, that is all the groups attached to it are different. But glycine is the only amino acid which does not contain chiral carbon. Thus, it means that it will not be optically active. When we talk about amino acids are basically categorized into three categories. They are the acidic, they are amino acids are basically categorized as acidic amino acids, then basic amino acids, and then the neutral amino acids. We have seen that the amino acid contains acidic as well as basic group. Carboxylic group is acidic, and we had seen in the chapter amines that this amide group is basic in nature because it has a lone pair of electrons. So this amides behave basically as the Lewis bases. When the number of carboxylic groups is more than the number of amide groups in an amino acid, then we classify them under the category acidic. That is when the COO group are more in number than the NH2 group, they are under the acidic category. The vice versa would be for the basic category. When the number of amide groups is more as compared to the carboxylic acidic groups, we will say that they are the basic amino acids. And when the number of COOH equals to the number of amides, then we say that this particular amino acid is neutral in nature. We have mainly 20 amino acids. Do remember this thing. We have basically 20 amino acids, and apart from acidic, basic and neutral, there are two more categories under which we divide these amino acids, and those are the essential amino acids, and second one is the non-essential amino acids. Now, this is a question of year 2017. 2016-17, this was a question which was asked in 2 mark. What are essential and non-essential amino acids? Give one example. So you had to define essential and non-essential amino acids. So these small definitions are also of great importance for our examinations. Okay, what are the things which we feel essential for us? Those things which we do not have but we require them for our livelihood. Okay, so basically essential and non-essential amino acids are also categorized in the same group. Essential amino acids are those amino acids which we require in a quantity but they are not present in our body. They are categorized as essential amino acids. Non-essential amino acids being those amino acids which we have or which we can synthesize in our body, which we do not have to consume from somewhere. So basically the essential amino acids are usually taken by us in our diets. 10 amino acids are categorized under the essential amino acids and the rest 10 in the non-amino acid group. So the diet of these essential amino acid is, that is the need for these 10 amino acids is completed by our dietary substances. We have to intake these amino acids. Now these amino acids link with each other in order to form the polymer which is proteins. So let us see how. Right now in the structure of amino acid we had seen that it contains a carboxylic and an amide group, and we classified them as acidic, basic and neutral based on the number of COOH and NH2 groups. Now let us just study properties of these amino acids. These amino acids are basically crystalline salts which are colorless and soluble in water. These do not occur completely as an acidic or a basic particle, but they occur as salts. That is, when we are talking about this particular amino acid, in the amino acid where both the carboxylic as well as the basic group are present, that is both molecules present in one single structure, we call it as a zwitterion. That is where both the acidic and basic groups are present in the same molecule. When we talk about the zwitterion, there is one very strange thing in this. We see that this particular hydrogen of the carboxylic group, it migrates to the nitrogen of the amide group, and the structure turns out to be this. Turns out to be COO minus here and NH3 plus here. Now this COO minus group would behave as a base and this NH3 plus would behave as an acid, because we had seen in class 11th that those substances which are able to accept a proton, they behave as a base, they act as a base, and those which are able to donate are acids. So this NH3 group contributes to the acidic character, and this COO minus contributes to the basic COO minus contributes to the basic character of this amino acids. Now we had seen that when we condense the amino acids we get peptides, and when these peptides are condensed we form proteins. So now let us see how are these amino acids condensed, or how do they polymerize to form the final product, that is the proteins. When we are talking about the amino acids, when two or more than two amino acids combine in such a way that there is an elimination of a water molecule and this amide and carboxylic group get attached together, that is the time when we say that polypeptides are formed, and these polypeptides in turn polymerize to form the basic proteins. So now let us study how are these polypeptides formed. Suppose we have this amino acid NH2 CH2 COOH. This is basically glycine. This is one amino acid. Let's take the example of another amino acid. This is alanine. When alanine and glycine combine, there is a loss of water molecule. Let's see how. Here we have this H, H and N. Now from here, this OH and this H, this particular water molecule is eliminated from the compound and we get NH2, CH2, CO, NH, CH, COOH and here we had CH3. That is, now we have a CONH group. This particular place, that is when the carboxylic group and the amide group bond together, this forms a peptide and this particular is called as a peptide bond or it is called as peptide linkage. That is, when amino acids combine together with the help of this peptide or peptide bond or peptide linkage, then these polypeptides are formed. And when there are n number of polypeptides, that is, those polypeptides with a molecular mass of more than 10,000 U, those polypeptides are basically called as proteins. So we had seen how amino acids condense to form peptides and how these peptides would condense to form these particular proteins. Now when we talk about proteins, the structure of protein is very important. The structure of protein is basically studied under two categories. First is the fibrous proteins and the second one is the globular protein. The questions which are usually asked from the structure of protein are either they directly ask you a question that describe the structure of protein, or they twist and turn the question what happens when denaturation of protein occurs. And remember this thing, denaturation of protein is one of the most favorite questions of CBSE. It is usually asked in 2 or 3 marks question. Either they ask you what is denaturation of protein, or they can twist and turn it in other languages. So now let us see the structure of proteins.
Proteins are basically those biomolecules which are formed by the union or the polymerization of various amino acids. And on that basis itself, that is how those amino acids are linked or arranged side by side or in sequence to each other, we have the structures of proteins, because proteins are those biomolecules or biopolymers of basically the amino acids. Based on that, the structures of protein are basically categorized into 4 categories: the primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure and the quaternary structure. When we talk about the primary structure of protein, we all know that protein is basically the union of amino acids. The primary structure tells us that how the different amino acids are linked in a sequence to form a peptide bond and these polypeptide linkages. We can see here, this is basically the structure of protein. This is the peptide bond and these are the different stacks of the amino acid sequences. These amino acid sequences, you can see as it is highlighted here, it is joined together by that particular polypeptide linkage. So it is giving us the sequence of the amino acid. When we talk about the secondary structure of protein, the secondary structure of protein is basically differentiated into two types of structures, that is a helical structure and a pleated structure. In the year 1951, Linnaeus Pauling started his work on finding out the exact structures of protein, and by various study and X-ray techniques, he found that there arises a condition where hydrogen bonds are formed between the same amide molecule. When there is an interaction or a hydrogen bond between the same amide molecule, they start forming a helical structure, and this gives us to be the alpha helix structure of a protein. Likewise, in the same year, along with his co-workers, he started the further studies and found that proteins can also be arranged in an extended or stretched format. Suppose we have a small rubber band and we stretch it, and we keep these stretched rubber band stacks one above the other and side by side. There starts forming or development of these kind of hydrogen bondings or interaction between the side by laying molecules or the sheets. So, in order to give it a three-dimensional structure, the stretched extended structures are stacked one above the other and laid side by side, which leads to this interaction or the formation of hydrogen bond, and thus arises the beta pleated structure of the proteins. Then when we talk about the tertiary structure, it basically gives us the folding of the helix. We all have seen this thing in a very regular time, on a very daily routine. When we just take out the headphones from our pocket, they become entangled between themselves. So, when we talk about the tertiary structures of the protein, it is nothing but the folding, coiling and the bending of the polypeptide chain so as to form a three-dimensional structure. That is, the biomolecules of amino acids, that is when amino acids combine, they form a polypeptide chain or a peptide chain. And when a peptide chain having more than 10,000 U molecular mass forms a protein. When those polypeptide chains, they get folded, coiled and bended. See, here we have a folded, coiled and it gets even bent. This kind of a structure is the tertiary structure of protein. When we talk about the quaternary structure of protein, it basically shows the interaction between two different types of protein molecules. That is, quaternary structure would show the interaction, how two or more protein molecules interact together, and when interacted together, they give rise to a next polypeptide chain, and that particularly shows the quaternary structure of protein. After the structure of protein, let us now start to see how these structures of proteins are kept stable at a particular point and in the three dimension. When we talk about the structure of protein, two more things which are related to this structure become very important for our studies. That is, the native state of the protein and the denaturation of protein. When we talk about the native state means the energetically stable state of a protein. That is, native state is nothing else but the most stable state in terms of energy which the protein will follow so as to have a stabilized three-dimensional structure. Now when we talk about the denaturation of protein is nothing else but a change in the physical and biological properties of the proteins without harming any of these chemical composition of protein. This can occur by either change in the pH or temperature or by certain chemical agents. Just suppose that we put a tablespoon or a spoonful of lemon juice into milk. What happens? It starts curdling. दूध फट जाता है. That is basically the denaturation of protein. That is, when we change the pH, we have changed the pH, we have added So what happens when we are adding the acid? Basically these hydrogen bonds in the structure of a protein, they get disturbed. Or when we provide an acidic medium, basically this hydrogen would start coming out. Why? Because acidic medium is nothing else but the protonation of something. So when we are increasing or decreasing the pH, that is slight change in the pH changes the nature of protein. Nature means its biological properties are hampered, its physical properties are hampered, but the chemical properties and the chemical composition remains the same. Apart from this, when we increase the temperature, when a lot more increase in temperature or a decrease in temperature is done, the same thing happens. Due to the increase in temperature, the thermal vibrations, they start harming these hydrogen bonds formed between two molecules of proteins. And due to the increased thermal vibrations, these hydrogen bonds would start breaking up. And this would lead to the disruption in structure. Suppose if we have a coiled structure like this, after denaturation, suppose this is the native state, and if we change the temperature, if we change the pH, denaturation may lead to the formation of single straight or helical structures. That is, now the coil is not there, the bend is not there, simply there is a folding or a helical structure. This means that denaturation of protein is changing its physical state, changing its biological properties, but the chemical composition still remains the same. So, denaturation does not hamper the chemical composition. One more very important thing about the denaturation of protein is that denaturation of protein does not disturb the primary structure, but the secondary and tertiary structure, that is this particular structure, would remain the same, but this helical structure and this beta pleated structure or this tertiary structure may be changed. Like this helical structure may be converted into a straight chain, or when these hydrogen bondings break, these beta pleated structure sheets may move away from each other, these coils move away from each other. If you talk about the example, I had already given one, that is the curdling of milk is one very good example which we can see in the day-to-day life in our routines. So this was about the proteins. Next we would start off with the next topic, that is the last topic of this chapter, that is the nucleic acids. Now the next topic which we will be talking about is the nucleic acids. We all know that each and every generation of each and every species is linked to the previous generation or to its ancestors by some or the other interaction or by some or the other linkage. This linkage is nothing else but the material present in the living cells, that is the nucleus. The nucleus contains certain materials which pass the characters from one generation to another, and these characters or the heredity is transmitted from a generation to another generation by the chromosomes. These chromosomes are basically formed of proteins and the nucleic acid. That is, nucleic acids are basically formed in the living composition or the living part of each and every cell. These nucleic acids are basically formed as the nucleotides. As we had seen that proteins are composed of amino acids, here we have the nucleic acids are basically composed of the nucleotides. These nucleotides are basically made up of three things, that is a nitrogenous base, sugar and a phosphate group. These three things contribute to a nucleotide. These nucleotides link to each other and they form the chromosomes, that is the heredity material. Now when we talk about the base, basically this base is a base which contains nitrogen, and we have two types of bases. We have purines and we have pyrimidines. Pyrimidines are single ringed structure, whereas purines are two fused rings, that is two rings fused together. That is, we have purines and we have the pyrimidines. These are the heterocyclic rings. Here we have two fused ring in purines, and pyrimidines we have heterocyclic ring. Heterocyclic means the ring will contain some other element apart from carbon. Basically it's going to be nitrogen, because these bases are the nitrogenous bases, that is bases containing nitrogen. When we are talking about purines, we have adenine denoted by A and guanine denoted by G. These are common in both the DNA as well as RNA. When we are talking about pyrimidines, they are basically substituted three pyrimidines, that is cytosine, thymine and uracil. The difference between these is that DNA contains thymine, that is T, and RNA contains U, that is uracil. Now if we talk about the sugars, basically we have two types of sugars. We have the ribose sugar which is present in the RNA, and we have the deoxyribose sugar which is present in the DNA. These sugar, basically the difference which you will find between the structures of these two is that in the deoxyribose sugar you will find one OH group missing, rather you have just one H present here in the structure. Now when we talk about the phosphate group, they are basically the phosphate bonded molecules. If we draw the structure of these, this is basically the structure of the phosphate group. So if I talk about nucleotide, it is nothing else but a combination of a nitrogenous base, sugar, ribose and deoxyribose and a phosphate group. Same goes on as nucleosides. Apart from nucleotides, we have the nucleosides as well. Nucleosides basically are composed of a base along with sugar. That is, we will have a nitrogenous base and we will have sugar. These are basically composition in the RNA and DNA. When we are talking about the bases, in case of RNA, the base would be C and U. That is, if we talk about the pyrimidines, we will have uracil as a base and sugar will be the ribose sugar. If we are talking about the DNA, the only difference would occur in pyrimidine is here we have the thymine and the sugar will be the deoxyribose sugar. That means when we talk about the structure of a DNA, it comprises of these nucleosides. That is, it would have a base, it would have a sugar and would have a phosphate group linked together. When we are talking about sugar, we will have monosaccharide units, and those monosaccharide units will be connected with each other and there will be a link between them, that is the oxygen molecule, and such bonds would be called as the glycosidic linkage or the glycosidic bonds. That is the union of two monosaccharide units, or when two monosaccharide units join to each other with an O molecule in between them or with an oxygen atom. Such bonds are known as the glycosidic bonds. Now when we look at the structure of DNA, we find two basic things there. There is one 5' end and there is one 3' end. Here we have seen the nucleotides, That is, a base will be there, sugar will be there, and a phosphate group would be there. And we have seen that these bases are composed of nitrogenous rings. So 5 prime and 3 prime basically denote the position of carbon in the nitrogenous base in that heterocyclic ring where this particular phosphate group or the sugar group would attach. That is, this 5 prime and 3 prime end denote that particular carbon where the linkage or where this particular phosphate group would be present. If the phosphate group is attached to the 5th carbon, it is known as the 5 prime end. If it is attached to the 3rd carbon, it is known as the 3 prime end. So, this diagram clearly shows the summary of a nucleic acid. Now when we talk about the nucleic acid, one very important thing which we need to learn according to the syllabus is basically the structure of DNA. Okay, we all have read in our previous classes, that is, those who belong to the biology stream have read it very deeply or might be in a depth as compared to the students who are there in the maths stream. Now, we all know that the structure of DNA was proposed by Watson and Crick, and it is a double helical model. That is, I just give you a small trick. If the structure comes in examination for drawing and you get confused how to draw a double helix, just take two pencils together, hold them having their tips at the same point and just start drawing the helical structure. Do remember to put the pressure same so that there doesn't occur any kind of an interruption. You can just end it off like here. Don't give this kind of a spike, this kind of a shape in this. This would give you beautiful ring. That is, these are double helical structure when we talk about in DNA. You can again make this thing like this. So this is nothing else but the double helical structure. We all know that in the double helical structure of DNA, there are certain pairings. That is, certain purine bases bind up or have connected to the pyrimidines through a double hydrogen bond or a triple hydrogen bond. We all have seen one very important thing, that A binds with C. That is, adenine binds with thymine, A binds with T with a double hydrogen bond, and G binds with C with a triple hydrogen bond. That is, a double bond is present between A and T and a triple bond is present between G and C. Apart from this, we also know that one end of this DNA molecule, one helix, runs from 5 prime to 3 prime and the other runs from 3 prime to 5 prime. Now what are these 5 prime and 3 prime? We have just now discussed. That is, it is in relation with the bonding or the place or the position of carbon where this particular bonding of the phosphate group and the nucleoside or the basic nitrogenous bases occur. Apart from this, we have seen one more thing. If you visualize this particular structure of DNA, you will find that apart from the double and triple bond, we also have one very small thing, which is the Chargas rule, which has stated that A binds with T and G binds with C. Apart from this, one very important thing you can see in the structure of DNA, there is a particular number of bases which are present in a helix. That is, there will be 10 bases which would occur in one helix. That is, from here to here, there will be a certain number of helix which are present in the DNA molecule. Now let us study the structure of DNA in detail. We have already seen that the strands of DNA, that is the structure of DNA, is double helical and the two strands are anti-parallel to each other. That is, one runs from the 5 prime to 3 prime end and the other runs from the 3 prime to the 5 prime end. Apart from this, some salient features of the structure of DNA are, there are the bases, that is adenine and guanine, cytosine and thymine. A binds with this T, that is adenine binds with thymine with a double bond, and G binds with C, that is guanine binds with cytosine with a triple bond. These bonds are the hydrogen bonds. Apart from this, we can see that the strands are right-handed in nature, and each turn of the helix is of 34 angstrom, and it consists of 10 nucleotides. That is 34 angstroms and 10 nucleotides gives us that the distance between each nucleotide is 3.4 angstrom units. We can see that the helix are stable and they do not overlap with each other. This happens because they are held together, or we can say that they are stacked one over the other with the help of the bases which are held by the double and the triple hydrogen bonds which are separating them. Apart from that, we can also see that in RNA, apart from DNA, the only difference is that the RNA consists of the uracil in place of thymine. Apart from this, we can see that this DNA structure has a beta conformation. When we have to separate, or if we need to separate the strands from each other, basically on heating we can see that the strands of the DNA are separated from one another. This process of separating the strands of DNA by heating is known as melting. And when we cool them, they again hybridize and they form the sealed structure again. This process is called as the annealing. Now, that particular temperature where the two strands of DNA completely separate from one another, it is known as the melting temperature. And this has a specific sequence for all. After this, we will see the basic biological functions of the nucleic acids. When we are talking about the biological functions of the nucleic acid, two very important functions of the nucleic acid are the replication and the protein synthesis. The DNA has a very unique property of synthesizing another molecule, or we can say that it can duplicate or replicate itself from one strand. This process of formation or the synthesis of another replica or a copy of DNA from the existing strands is known as the replication of DNA. The replication basically begins from the pairing of the bases. That is, after the synthesis of the new DNA, the strands would be having the same bases as they had before. The second one is the protein synthesis. We all know that the very important information, that is the generation and generation, are connected by a link or heredity. There are various informations going on in the life processes which have to be passed. There are certain processes which needs to be carried out. The genetic informations which are coded in the DNA in a form of a specific base sequences, they are first translated and then expressed in a particular sequence of amino acids. This results in the synthesis of a specific protein which performs various functions. For example, we have three basic types of RNAs, that is mRNA, that is the messenger RNA, rRNA, that is the ribosomal RNA, and tRNA, that is the transfer RNA. These three RNAs play a vital role in the protein synthesis. Apart from this, we also say that there is a unique technique for identifying a certain person. We have seen in very many movies, very many serials, web series, that when the body of a person is completely damaged, how do we recognize it? We recognize it by the DNA fingerprinting. This basic technique is used for identifying the individual person based upon its unique sequence of DNA, and hence is known as the DNA fingerprinting. Apart from this, the last topic and a very important topic from the point of view of CBSE examination is the difference between DNA and RNA. So let's have a quick look at the difference between the DNA and RNA. The very basic difference between the DNA and RNA starts from their occurrence. DNA is present in the nucleus while RNA in the cytoplasm of the cell. When we talk about the second difference, that is DNA has a double helical structure, whereas when we talk about RNA, it has a single helical structure. The next difference is the third one. DNA has the deoxyribose sugar while RNA has only the ribose sugar. Next one being a twist and a tail. We can have it in two different statements or we can have it in a single statement also. If you need to increase the number of differences, you can write it as in DNA we have thymine is present. Thymine is a base here, and here thymine is absent. You can write this difference as here uracil is not present. Here you can write as uracil is present. Or to beautify this, we can just write this difference as it contains thymine as a base, and here we have uracil as a base. Apart from A, G and C, apart from A, G and C, that is A, G, C would be common in all the both of the things. Here it will be thymine and here it will be the uracil. If we talk about the fifth difference, DNA has the unique property of replication. That is, DNA replication can be seen, whereas if we talk about RNA, it cannot replicate. That is, there is no replication in RNA. One more difference is that is the sixth one. DNA is known as a hereditary material, whereas RNA conducts the process of the protein synthesis. These are basically the six main differences between DNA and RNA. And this comes up to be the end of the chapter. In this chapter, the few things which you have to learn by heart, like if we start from the starting, is you must learn the difference between the DNA and the RNA. You must learn the denaturation of protein. It is a very important thing. Apart from that, you should be knowing the Howard projection and the Fisher projection of the structure of glucose. You should be well aware about the classification of sugars, that is the classification of carbohydrates as well. Apart from that, the peptide bond, the glycosidic linkages, the Zwitter ions, the formation, the structures of protein. These are the few very important questions from this chapter. So that brings us to the end of the organic chemistry. Good day everyone. Please do stay home and stay safe. Thank you.